Not all wounds that can end a marriage are the kind you can see. So today, we're going to dive into a landmark legal case from India that really forces us to ask a tough question. How does the law handle harm that's invisible, the kind that breaks a marriage from the inside out?
Right, so that's the big question, isn't it? What happens when the wounds aren't physical but psychological? What are the legal grounds for ending a marriage then? Well, this fascinating and incredibly important case gives us some pretty powerful answers. Let's get into it.
All right, so the case we're talking about is Kolvankar versus Kolvankar, which was decided by the Bombay High Court way back in 2004. It's the story of a marriage that started to fall apart almost from day one, and it forced the courts to grapple with a really difficult task. How do you weigh the evidence of pain you can't even see?
And wow, the timeline here it's incredibly fast. They get married on November 16, 1993. Just 3 days later, the husband says she refused any intimacy, a pattern he claimed just kept going. And get this, within 3 months, she had left the home for good. It took just over a year for him to file to end the marriage. So this wasn't some slow, drawn-out decline. This was a marriage that just imploded.
Okay, and this is where the legal side of things gets really interesting. The husband didn't just go to court asking for a simple divorce. Oh no, he gave the court two very different ways to end the marriage.
So, on the one hand, you've got this argument for nullity. He was basically saying the marriage was never real in the first place, claiming it couldn't be consummated because of his wife's psychological impotency. But he had a backup plan. If the court didn't buy that, he argued for a divorce, claiming her actions added up to mental cruelty so severe that staying together was just impossible.
So, you might be wondering, what exactly is psychological impotency? It's a really key legal idea here. It's not about the body, it's about the mind. It means that even if a person is physically perfectly capable, there's some kind of mental block, the law calls it an invincible repugnance, that makes it practically impossible for them to be intimate with that specific person.
And on the other side of the coin, you have mental cruelty. So what's that? Legally, it's any conduct that causes so much mental pain and suffering that you can't be reasonably expected to live with that person anymore. It's about a pattern of behavior that makes the marriage completely unbearable.
Okay, so how did the husband actually build this case for cruelty? Well, he laid out 3 main pillars. First, he pointed to the constant, unjustified refusal of intimacy. Second, this deeply symbolic act. He claimed his wife actually broke her Mangalsutra. That's the sacred necklace that signifies a Hindu marriage. And third, and this is a big one, she filed a criminal complaint against him and his family for cruelty, a case that was later thrown out.
And then came this bombshell piece of evidence, a handwritten apology note from the wife. It says, "I have committed a mistake. I assure that I will not repeat any such mistake." But here's the twist. She signed it using her married name, Sadhana Satish Kolvankar. Her defense? She claims she was forced to write that note before they were even married. So as you can imagine, this little piece of paper became a huge point of contention.
So you've got these two totally different claims, impotency and cruelty, and all this conflicting evidence. How in the world did the High Court untangle all of this? Let's break down what they decided. First up, the court tackled the husband's claim for annulment. Was this marriage never truly a marriage at all, based on this idea of psychological impotency?
And the answer was, nope, annulment denied. Why? Because a medical exam of the wife, even though it was done years after they separated, showed that intercourse had happened at some point. There just wasn't enough solid proof to meet the very high legal bar for impotence.
But of course, that wasn't the end of it. Remember that backup plan? The court then turned to the husband's second claim, divorce on the grounds of mental cruelty. And on this claim, the court sided with the husband. Divorce granted. The judge decided that the cumulative effect of everything the wife did, the refusal, the symbolic rejection, the false criminal case, all of it together created a situation of severe mental cruelty. The marriage, they concluded, was broken beyond repair. Now, this idea of cumulative effect is absolutely central to the court's thinking. It wasn't just one single act that tipped the scales. It was the combination of everything, the whole pattern of behavior, that led to the verdict. Let's look at exactly how the court saw it.
Yeah, when you see it laid out like this, the court's logic is crystal clear. They didn't see the sexual refusal as just a disagreement. They saw it as a form of cruelty that causes real frustration and anguish. They saw the breaking of the Mangalsutra as a powerful symbolic act, a deliberate rejection of the marriage itself. And filing a false criminal complaint, the court called that a serious form of harassment, basically using the law as a weapon. Altogether, they painted a clear picture of mental cruelty.
Okay, so why are we still talking about a case from 2004? What makes it so important today? Well, because the judgment set some really powerful legal precedents that continue to influence marriage law in India.
Here's what this case really cemented in the law. It confirmed that yes, persistent and unjustified refusal of intimacy can legally be considered mental cruelty. It established a very strong precedent that filing false criminal cases against a spouse is a grave form of cruelty. It showed that symbolic acts can be used as real evidence of a person's intentions. And in a really fascinating, nuanced final point, the court still awarded alimony to the wife. This clarified that even if a spouse is found to be at fault, they aren't automatically cut off from financial support.
You know, this case was a massive step forward in getting the law to recognize psychological pain inside a marriage, but it leaves us with a really big question for the future. As our understanding of mental and emotional health gets better and better, how does the law keep up? How should it adapt to protect people from those invisible wounds that can break a relationship apart?